Sleep deprivation. O soft embalmer of the still midnight, shutting with careful fingers and benign gloom-plead eyes, embowered from the light, enshaded in forgetfulness divine. O soothest sleep, if so it please thee, close in midst of this thine hymn my willing eyes, or wait the Amen ere thy poppy throws around my bed its lulling charities. Then save me, or the passed day will shine upon my pillow, breeding many woes. Save me from curious conscience that still lords its strength for darkness, burrowing like a mole. Turn the key deftly in the oiled wards, and seal the hushed casket of my soul. For those of you that didn't recognize it, that was To Sleep by John Keats. Sleep is the foundation of all success. When I sleep, it is like flicking a switch. I am asleep in moments, and I may as well be dead until I then awake, ready to embark upon another day of excellence in my world. I don't wake in between. Girlfriends, my ex-wife, have commented that it looks as if I was a corpse. I'm so still, barely breathing. And I sleep the sleep of the deep unconscious. I do not dream, and I wake ready and refreshed, and I sleep between 4 to 5 hours a night. And that is all I need. And it is fortunate that it's all that I need, as there is so much that I need to accomplish during each and every day. But what of you, dear victim of the narcissist? Weary, exhausted, grainy eyes, head throbbing, that pain just between the middle of your eyes, that dull ache behind them, that sickness in your chest as you sleepwalk through the day, drunk with fatigue. Sleep deprivation is common in the dynamic between the narcissist and the victim. It is a form of manipulation and consequence of being ensnared with our kind. But why does this sleep deprivation occur? Well, first of all, it arises because of our practice of keeping you awake. How does that appear? Well, for example, it might be because of our sense of entitlement. We want you to complete some task for us. We want you to continue watching a film with us. We want you to make us something to eat. We want you attending to some kind of chore. And our sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy for you, means you have to stay up and attend to that on our behalf. And thus, we keep you awake. Of course, we keep you awake, preventing you from going to bed, as a consequence of the fact that we're relishing your fuel. If we're having a conversation with you, your responses, of course, provide us with fuel. If we're watching a film together and talking about it, your observations, recommendations, comments all provide us with fuel. And therefore, we don't want your fueling to halt. There is the endless pursuit of fuel, and whilst, of course, fuel levels may be high or very high, there's always room for some more. And in some instances, the fact that we are keeping you awake, not in a malign way, but by continuing to talk to you, to flatter you, to ask you about your day, to talk at length, perhaps in one of a mid-ranger's mind-numbing monologues, is because we are relishing the fuel that is being provided by you listening, by you observing, passing comment. The very fact that you're listening and showing that you're listening your facial expression, the look in your eyes, the gestures that you make, and then added to that, communication by way of response, provides the narcissist with fuel. And in some instances, the narcissist is keeping you awake to keep drawing on your fuel. The narcissist may well be doing so many times in actually what they view as a benign way, just having a conversation, and their lack of awareness, sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, and lack of accountability means that they are not picking up on the fact that you are deadbeat, but instead they're continuing to attend to their needs. You might also be kept awake because we're having sex with you. The somatics and the elites may well go in for marathon sex sessions, and then even between rounds, wanting to talk to you, continue to caress you, touch you, continue with the intimacy, all the while drawing on the fuel. And therefore, those long sex sessions which go into the night and into the wee hours are all part of the assertion of control over you through the provision of sex. And whilst it is done again in a benign way, it may have a malign outcome for you because of the consequence of not letting you get off to sleep. Keeping you awake also appears as a consequence of malign behaviours, where we are asserting control over you or nullifying the threat to our control through argument, through provocation, through word salads, through circular conversations. Many of you will be familiar with those occasions where all you wanted to do was exit and go to bed. Crawl into bed and allow the Sandman to come and sprinkle sand upon your eyes so that you could drift off. But the narcissist would not let you. Prodding you, even as you lay on the bed so that you could not drift off. Asking you questions. Why have you done this? What did you mean by that? Continuing to talk to you. Demanding a response. Shouting at you. Not letting you go to sleep, because all of these behaviours are being meted out against you for the purposes of assertion of control, nullifying a perceived threat to control, and the drawing of fuel. In some instances, you're kept awake because of the needs of the narcissist in terms of being tended to, particularly prevalent amongst lessers and mid-range, and especially those of the victim cadre. The narcissist wants you, bring me another drink, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, could you get something for me? And especially if the narcissist is suffering from injury or illness. I need more painkillers. Can you administer them? Please rub that salve into my back. Stay and talk to me. It's hurting. I need you to distract me. Soothe my fevered brow. And accordingly, as a consequence of having you performing tasks, relishing your fuel, having sex with you, engaging in malign behaviours such as argument, circular conversation, word salad, provocation, and the necessity of tending, these are various ways that a narcissist keeps you awake, and might even do so for the entirety of the night. Why are these things being done? Well, when you're dealing with unaware, lesser and mid-range narcissists, you being prevented from sleep is actually a collateral consequence of the need to assert control, nullify threats to control, and gain fuel. That is the primary aim. So, having you do a task is the provision of a residual benefit and the assertion of control. Naturally, relishing the fuel and keeping you awake is all about drawing that fuel. Having sex with you is about the assertion of control through the provision of sexual interaction and drawing of the fuel. Engaging in argument, circular conversation, word salad, provocation is about the assertion of control, drawing fuel, and having you tend to the narcissist is the provision of a residual benefit, the provision of fuel, and an assertion of control. The fact that any of those activities lead to you being kept awake and exhausted is merely a collateral consequence. Understand that the lesser and mid-range narcissist is not focused on keeping you awake specifically. Instead, they want to achieve those aspects of the prime aims, and in so doing, because of that sense of entitlement, a lack of accountability, poor boundary recognition, and a lack of emotional empathy, the narcissist creates a result whereby you are deprived of your sleep by being kept awake. The greater and the ultra narcissist do two things. Similar to the lesser and mid-range, the assertion of control, the drawing of fuel, the receipt of residual benefits occurs in the ways that have been described, although greater and ultra are less interested in being tended to because that is not within their makeup as narcissists. More usually, they are looking at the other elements that I've described and are consciously engaging in that behaviour in order to assert control, draw fuel, etc. Moreover, the greater and the ultra will recognise that these behaviours are conducive to depriving you of sleep, leaving you exhausted, making you easier to control, and it becomes harder for you to cope with the ongoing behaviour towards you, especially where you're the intimate partner primary source in a sustained devaluation. And therefore, in those circumstances, what is occurring is that the narcissist is asserting control over you, both in the moment where greater and ultra, and in an ongoing future basis because of the calculated and planning way that those narcissists operate in. We are asserting control in the moment, drawing fuel in the moment, but we also recognise that doing this has the collateral consequence, which we intend and knowingly intend, that you're exhausted. And thus, keeping you awake where undertaken by lesser or mid-range is not about sleep deprivation per se. That's a collateral consequence. But where greater and ultra, it is about control, drawing fuel, but also bringing about your sleep deprivation. What about the instance of interrupting your sleep? You've managed to get off to sleep, but the narcissist keeps interrupting and waking you up. Why might that be done? Well, there are a variety of reasons. First of all, the narcissist mentality of, if I'm awake, you should be awake. Why? If you're sleeping there contentedly, that wounds the narcissist. You're not giving us any fuel, and you're engaging in something that's beneficial to you, and the narcissist is not receiving fuel and is in essence being ignored. Therefore, the narcissist experiences wounding in seeing you asleep when the narcissist is awake. And that might be that the narcissist has woken up himself during the night and hasn't drifted off to sleep, or in other instances where you have fallen asleep first and the narcissist remains awake, and you might have drifted off for 10 minutes before getting that sharp elbow in the ribs to wake you up. Accordingly, your sleep is interrupted in those circumstances because it wounds the narcissist. In another instance, it's where the narcissist comes to bed to find you already asleep. The narcissist might have been downstairs watching television or tucked away in the bolt hole, manipulating that virtual fuel matrix, or has come in from a night out, possibly chasing intimate partner secondary sources. Either way, the narcissist comes in and you are asleep. Now, if you're in the golden period when the narcissist comes to bed, the narcissist will leave you be because you're painted white, and the narcissist sees you being asleep as a reflection of how content you are as a consequence of the narcissist's largesse. You have a large comfy bed to sleep in. You've had a good day with us. We will of course make it all about us, and therefore you are allowed to sleep. But if you find yourself in a position of devaluation, then it's highly likely that the narcissist will wake you up, because finding you asleep again wounds the narcissist. So take, for example, the narcissist has been out, comes in, finds you asleep in bed. He may well perch on the end of the bed and start singing, or makes a noise as he takes his clothes off, attends to the bathroom in a noisy manner, starts playing music, switches the television on, or indeed comes over and specifically wakes you up on the pretext of asking you how your day has been, or telling you all about what the narcissist has been doing. Indeed, recently an individual was sentenced to prison as a consequence of the fact that he had repeatedly engaged in domestic violence against his partner, and on the final occasion which proved his undoing by way of conviction and sentence to prison, he had been out. When he returned home, he found his partner asleep. He sat on the end of the bed, playing loud music from his phone, causing her to wake up. When she, not unsurprisingly, complained about the interruption to her sleep and the playing of the loud music, he then dragged her from the bed and beat her. This happened because when he came home, her sleeping, her contentment, wounded him. His narcissism caused him to need to assert control over her, with the by consequence of causing him, through his sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, to play loud music on his phone. This then woke her. If she'd responded in a different way, provided fuel and given control to him, he may well have stopped. However, not unreasonably, she reprimanded him for playing the music loud and disturbing her sleep. She provided challenge fuel. He needed to assert control, and doubtless this individual being a lower lesser or middle lesser, he then dragged her from the bed and beat her severely. She then telephoned 999, the emergency services, and because she feared for her life, utilised the 5-5 protocol, which caused the police to realise that she was in distress and was unable to speak. Police attended, the offender was arrested, and he already had convictions for beating his partner and had a suspended sentence, and if my memory serves me correctly, he was imprisoned for some 16 months, possibly longer actually, as a consequence of this meting out of violence against the victim. Clearly, the behaviour of a narcissist is there, and an example of the interruption of sleep born out of his sense of entitlement, poor boundary recognition, and the fact that he was wounded by her being asleep, and then thereafter she challenges his control and he metes out physical violence towards her as part of the assertion of control to his perceived belief that she was threatening his control by pointing out that he had interrupted her sleep. A third way that sleep is interrupted for you is as a consequence of you being woken for sex. Again, sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, and the narcissist attends, is wounded by you being asleep, and wakes you up for the purposes of asserting control over you by having sex. No regard for the fact that you're tired, and indeed the narcissist may believe that what they're doing is a pleasant thing, that it's almost romantic to wake you and to have sex with you. In some instances, this goes further. Certain narcissists, when faced by their sleeping partner and wounded by the same, thus experiencing a lack of control, engage in sexual assault or rape of their partner by attempting or indeed starting to have sex with their partner whilst they're asleep. There is an absence of boundary recognition, a sense of entitlement, an absence of emotional empathy, and the sleep is eventually interrupted as a consequence of the molestation of the sleeping partner by the sexual behaviour of the narcissist. A further reason why sleep deprivation occurs through the interruption to your sleep is the narcissist waking you on the pretext of a false emergency. Again, the narcissist sees the sleeping partner. This wounds the narcissist, control is threatened, and there is a need for fuel. The narcissist therefore wakes. And this is more likely to be utilised by mid-range narcissists, pretending that there's some emergency with the children or with themselves, or that they've heard a noise, that there's an intruder, that they're feeling unwell, that a comet is plummeting towards the Earth, and this may be the last opportunity to talk to one another before Armageddon strikes. There'll be any excuse or pretext used, varying in plausibility, for the purposes of asserting control and drawing fuel. All of this means that, as a consequence of the necessity of asserting control over you, a narcissist can repeatedly interrupt your sleep, either many times in the course of one night or night after night after night, resulting in your sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation occurs as a consequence of either keeping you awake or causing you to become awake by interrupting. In all instances where this is occasioned by lesser or mid-range, your exhaustion is a collateral consequence. The reason that the narcissist has behaved in the way that they have is to assert control and draw fuel, and in some instances residual benefits. Where greater and ultra, it is also done for the purposes of asserting control, drawing fuel, sometimes, though less often, receiving residual benefits, but also with the understood, wanted, and planned impact that you become deprived of sleep by way of further punishment, by way of being in sustained devaluation, where you're the intimate partner primary source, and furthermore, for the purposes of making you easy to control by depriving you of this sleep. This is sleep deprivation part 1. Part 2 will address additional factors which result in you being deprived of sleep as a consequence of the narcissistic dynamic. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.